You know there comes a point in your life when the truth, the real truth, can't stay buried any longer. You feel it pressing on your chest, weighing down every excuse, every evasion, every half-truth you've used to avoid the person you could be. And that moment, that threshold, is what I mean when I say it's time to tell you everything. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean it's time to confront the things you've avoided. The fears, the resentments, the self-deceptions. Because when you hide from the truth, you don't protect yourself, you corrupt yourself. And you know this, you feel this. Every time you lie to others, to yourself, you move a little further away from who you might have been. And that's a tragedy. There's nothing more hellish than the realization that you could have been so much more, and you chose not to be. It's time to tell you everything, because you need to remember that you are not a victim of circumstance. You are a being capable of remarkable transformation. You are the creature who can bear the unbearable, who can confront chaos and carve out meaning. And that's not a poetic exaggeration, that's a psychological and spiritual fact. But here's the problem: we run from that responsibility. We drown ourselves in distractions, in resentment, in comfort. We tell ourselves stories. I'll change later. It's not my fault. Someone else should fix this. And each of those stories is a little lie whispered to make the suffering a little easier. But the longer you believe them, the smaller you become. And that's why I say it's time to tell you everything. Because you have to stop pretending that the chaos around you is entirely someone else's fault. You have to stop believing that you can lie to yourself and get away with it. You can't. You pay for it in anxiety, in guilt, in despair. And the only cure is truth. Raw, painful, transforming truth. So tell the truth. Start small if you have to. Tell the truth about who you are, about what you want, about what you've done and what you haven't done. Tell the truth to yourself, because when you do, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see who you could be. You begin to resurrect what was lost. And then, and this is crucial, you start to act like that. Truth matters. You start standing up straight, not because someone told you to, but because you've realized you must. You clean your room, not because it's trivial, but because it's symbolic. It's a manifestation of your capacity to bring order into chaos. You take responsibility for your life, for your words, for your soul. And when you do that, when you finally decide that the truth is worth the cost, something divine awakens in you. It's the same force that created the world out of chaos, the same force that spoke light into being. That's not metaphorical. That's the structure of being itself. And you can embody it if you're willing to face everything you've been running from. So yes, it's time to tell you everything. It's time to tell you that the meaning you're looking for won't come from comfort or ease. It will come from courage, from bearing your suffering with dignity, from speaking the truth no matter how hard it is. And if you do that, if you truly take that path, you will not only transform yourself, but you'll begin to transform the world around you, because truth radiates outward. It heals, it orders, it redeems. So stand up, speak carefully, speak honestly, carry your burden. And remember, the world is waiting for you to become who you were meant to be. It's time to tell you everything. It's time to begin. Confronting the truths you've been avoiding is one of the most difficult and most necessary acts of personal transformation you will ever undertake. It's not just about honesty in a superficial sense. It's about facing the parts of yourself you have ignored, the realities you've denied, and the consequences you've pretended weren't your fault. You can feel it when you're avoiding something important. There's a quiet tension that sits in your chest, a subtle but constant anxiety that you can't quite explain. It's your soul's way of telling you that you're living in contradiction, that you're out of alignment with what you know to be right. You can silence that voice for a while through distraction, through comfort, through the endless pursuit of pleasure, but it doesn't go away. It festers. It grows into resentment, bitterness, and self-contempt. And eventually, it manifests as suffering that feels arbitrary and unfair, but isn't. It's the natural outcome of running from the truth. When you lie to yourself, you're not just avoiding a difficult moment. You're fundamentally damaging your relationship with reality. And when your relationship with reality fractures, everything else begins to fall apart. You start to lose trust in yourself because deep down, you know you're building your life on a foundation that isn't stable. You know you've compromised You know you've chosen the easy way instead of the truthful one. Every time you do that, you teach yourself to be weaker. You teach yourself that it's acceptable to hide, to twist things, to blame others. And over time, that habit becomes your character. You become the person who runs, who deceives, who avoids responsibility. You might still function outwardly. You might have a job, a family, even some degree of success. But inwardly, you'll feel hollow. That's because you've traded authenticity for comfort, and that's a trade that always costs more than it gives. There's a reason the great psychological and spiritual traditions emphasize confession, truth-telling, and moral clarity. It's because human beings cannot bear the weight of a lie forever. The truth you refuse to face will eventually surface, often at the worst possible time, and in the most destructive way. The suppressed emotion becomes rage. The avoided responsibility becomes guilt. The ignored flaw becomes corruption. That's why the first step toward redemption psychologically, morally, spiritually, is confrontation. You have to look at yourself as you are, not as you wish to be, and not as you pretend to be. You have to ask, where have I been dishonest? What am I afraid to admit? What am I still blaming others for? Those questions are terrifying because they strip away your justifications and expose the truth that you are complicit in your own suffering. But that realization, painful as it is also the beginning of freedom. Facing the truth doesn't mean condemning yourself. It means acknowledging that the potential for both good and evil resides within you and choosing to align with what is true and noble, no matter the cost. It's the recognition that your life cannot move forward until you stop lying about where you are. When you confront the truth, you begin to repair your fractured self. You rebuild integrity piece by piece as you learn to stand face to face with reality. And reality, harsh, unyielding, and merciful all at once, begins to respond. It starts to reveal patterns, connections, paths forward that were invisible before because you were too afraid to look. That's the paradox of truth. It terrifies you before it liberates you. It shatters your illusions before it rebuilds your strength. And the longer you avoid it, the more it costs you in spirit, in peace, in potential. Confronting the truth isn't a single act, it's a lifelong discipline. It's a daily decision to walk toward what's real, however uncomfortable, rather than retreat into what's easy. Responsibility is the pathway to meaning and transformation because it demands that you take ownership of the chaos that surrounds you and the chaos within you. It's the recognition that no one is coming to save you, that the order and direction of your life depend on the degree to which you're willing to bear the weight of it. Most people think freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, but that's not freedom. That's chaos disguised as liberty. True freedom comes when you voluntarily accept responsibility, when you choose to act rightly even when it's difficult, and when you commit yourself to something greater than your own comfort. Responsibility gives structure to your existence. It tells you who you are and what you stand for. Without it, you drift aimlessly, constantly at the mercy of circumstance and emotion. When you assume responsibility, you're not just taking on burdens, you're shaping meaning. You're saying, I will carry this, and in that act, you discover strength you didn't know you had. You transform suffering into purpose. You transform limitation into discipline. And you begin to see that life's challenges are not merely obstacles, but invitations to grow. That's why those who carry the heaviest responsibilities often find the deepest meaning. Because meaning is not found in comfort, but in the struggle to overcome what is difficult and necessary. Every step toward responsibility moves you closer to who you could be. You learn to organize your world, to bring order to what is disordered, to stand upright even when everything around you is uncertain. Responsibility calls you to maturity, to service, to courage. It's what transforms chaos into purpose, pain into strength, and existence into something worth living for. Truth, though painful, is the only force that redeems and restores order because it confronts the distortions that keep life fragmented and disoriented. When you speak or live a lie, you build your world on unstable ground. You might maintain the illusion for a while, but the cracks always show. The truth exposes those cracks, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you on something solid. It is a refining fire. It burns away what's false, superficial, and cowardly, leaving behind what is genuine and durable. The reason truth is painful is because it reveals your insufficiency. It forces you to see how much of your suffering is self-inflicted, how much of your misery comes from denial, avoidance, and resentment. Yet it's precisely that pain which becomes the source of redemption. Without it, you remain stuck in the same patterns, unable to evolve. Truth restores order because it aligns your perception with reality. It calls things what they are instead of what you wish they were. It demands humility, the willingness to accept that you've been wrong, that your judgments have been incomplete, that you still have much to learn. In that humility, something miraculous happens. You begin to see clearly. You stop fighting against the structure of existence and start cooperating with it. The world stops feeling like an enemy to be resisted and becomes a challenge to be understood. Truth is not just a moral virtue, it's a creative force. It's the same principle that brings light into darkness, meaning into chaos. Every honest word, every sincere admission, every courageous act of integrity pushes back against disorder. It repairs the fractures in your soul and, by extension, the fractures in the world around you. Truth is painful, but is also sacred because only through truth can redemption and restoration begin. Personal courage in facing chaos gives rise to genuine strength and purpose because courage is the act that bridges fear and transformation. Chaos represents everything uncertain, unpredictable, and beyond your control. It's the unknown future, the pain you try to avoid, the weakness you deny. When you turn away from it, it grows larger and more menacing. But when you face it, even trembling, something powerful happens. You begin to realize that fear is not the enemy, avoidance is. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear, it means deciding that something else is more important than fear itself. Every time you confront what terrifies you, you reclaim a part of yourself that was lost to hesitation and doubt. The process of facing chaos reshapes you from the inside out. It dismantles complacency and forces growth. You learn that strength isn't inherited or given, it's built through confrontation with difficulty. You become someone capable of carrying weight, of making decisions under pressure, of standing firm when everything seems unstable. That's where genuine purpose begins to emerge. You realize that your life gains direction not when everything is safe, but when you willingly walk into the unknown and learn to master it. Courage grants clarity because it aligns your actions with truth. When you act courageously, you stop lying to yourself about your limitations. You begin to see what you're truly capable of. Chaos becomes a teacher instead of a threat, and fear becomes an indicator of where growth is required. Strength born from courage is not arrogance or dominance, it's steadiness, composure, and integrity forged through trial. The individual who continually chooses courage over comfort becomes someone who can stand upright amid uncertainty and bring stability to others in a world that often feels like it's falling apart. By embodying truth, you not only change yourself, you help heal the world, because truth is not an isolated act. It's a ripple that moves outward through every word, every choice, every interaction. When you decide to live truthfully, you become a point of stability in a world that thrives on deception and convenience. You begin to speak and act with integrity, and that integrity challenges the people around you to rise to the same standard. The smallest honest act can alter the course of relationships, communities, and even cultures because truth restores trust, and trust is the foundation of all order. When you live by truth, you refuse to participate in the corruption that destroys meaning. You stop contributing to the noise of falsehoods that keep people lost and cynical. Embodying truth changes you first because it requires continuous self-examination. It demands that you confront your motives, your inconsistencies, your pride. It's not easy to live that way. It's exhausting to remain honest in a world that rewards appearances. But the reward is authenticity, the knowledge that who you are inside matches what you present to the world. And when people encounter someone who lives like that, they recognize something deeply human and rare. They see courage, not perfection, and that courage inspires transformation in others. The act of living truthfully heals the world because it replaces deceit with clarity and replaces fear with trust. Every time you refuse to lie, every time you speak honestly, every time you take responsibility for your words, you reinforce the structure of what is good and just. The truth spreads through example, not force. And in that spreading, it begins to reorder the chaos, one person, one conversation, one act of integrity at a time.